you to Greg and to Steve, not only for inviting me to speak to you tonight, but obviously as well for putting on this series, because I think it's so important to delve into making football for all and something that we're all passionate about. And been very fortunate to work with Steve at the Football Association and to learn from him and to be a part of this series is a real honour. So just a big thank you to Cheshire FA for putting it on and for inviting me to be a part of it. And like Greg said, this afternoon, this evening is about colourblind awareness in football, and just to delve into a little bit of the specifics as to what we're going to go into tonight. So, just put some outcomes on the screen that we're gonna try and meet in the next 45 minutes, and some questions around the topic of firstly, what is colourblindness? Some of you might have some understanding, some of you might have not a lot, which is absolutely fine, and hopefully we can start to delve into some of the meanings of it and the misconceptions, and then start to get into some of the specifics around, well, why is it important in football environments, and probably most importantly is the third one about, right, well, it doesn't actually have to be a problem. What are some of the simple strategies that we can implement to really make that positive difference? And as Greg said, you might, particularly if you haven't come across a lot of colour blindness in the past, then if you have got any questions at all, I promise there's no stupid questions. So please just put them in the chat box, and I'll do my best. And I'm sure Greg might be able to contribute as well from his experiences in terms of any questions that we can answer. Then we'll do that as we go along. So. I'm just going to invite you to start with just to share some of your thoughts in the chat box around, what do you currently know about colour blindness, or colour vision deficiency as its official title is. So, like I said, please don't be afraid if you don't know much. If you're wrong, please just feel free to drop some thoughts into the chat box. That'd be brilliant, just to gauge a little bit of an understanding in terms of what you know about the condition, any experiences that you might have had. That'd be brilliant, just as a baseline. Um, just while you're doing that and having to think and popping some things in there. As Greg said, Greg and I are showing our age a little bit because we got tested when we were at school, and it used to be something that was tested early on in primary school. Unfortunately, that funding was cut about 25 years ago, so it's not something that is commonly referred to, commonly talked about in schools anymore. And I've put that image on alongside the question because that might have been something that for those who are as old as myself and Greg might have experienced doing a colourblind test like that. So yeah, so thanks for those who are dropping some thoughts in the chat box. Absolutely, certain colours difficult to see. Yeah, more common, green and red. That's going to be a theme that we'll look into tonight. Some colours more vivid than others. Absolutely. So yeah, so some understanding, and we'll start into delve in tonight into some of that, the specifics, some of the detail, and what it means in a football environment. So just to kind of give you a little bit more detail and articulate better than I can, I'm just going to share a little video, which will hopefully explain a little bit further and start to put colour blindness into a football context. So just a little video there, like I said, and um, you know, probably one of the things that might have stood out, to those people who might not have had a lot much dealings with colourblindness for is it's actually how common it is. So you saw there, due to the science and it being carried on the X chromosome that actually in boys, 1 in 12 actually have some degree of colourblindness, which it wasn't until I started working at the FA and started to do work within colourblindness and football that I was realized how common it was. Certainly when I started school, as far as I was aware, I was the only person who was colourblind. But obviously there were much more colourblind people in the school, and it's something that because it's not tested now like it used to be, that there's probably a lot of players that you might be working with, particularly boys, who might have some degree of colourblindness but not be aware of it because they don't realize that they're seeing different to other people. And there are different severities. So, I've just put on the screen there different types of colour blindness. So, my severity is quite high in relation to others. So just to give you some idea of what I see, so the two pictures you can see on your left hand side, so the normal colour vision, and the severe red deficiency, both those pictures look exactly the same to me. And then the top right hand corner look exactly the same as well, apart from the number 23 towards the right hand side, which is slightly lighter. But other than that, all the other colours, all the other kits look the same. So, like I said, there's different degrees of severity. Very rare is tritanopia, which is the one in the bottom right hand corner, which is, getting towards being seen in black and white. But thankfully, that's one of the least common forms of color blindness. And as Sharon said in the chat, it's common. Red and green is the most common. That red and green look very similar. So. And that just gives you a little bit of an idea around what color blindness is, the different types of color blindness that people might have. But what we want to do tonight is really delve into the issue as to, right, well, why is it important in football environments? And, particularly, and the video starts to touch about it, right, well, what are some of the challenges faced by those who are colorblind? So for those who on the call who aren't colorblind, I'm going to try and bring you into Greg and I's world and give you a little bit of a insight into what it might look like for a colourblind player or a colourblind fan who's in a football environment and what football might look like to them. So I'm just going to show you some clips, and I want you to try and work out who's on which team as you're watching these clips. So, Greg, I don't know about you, Greg, but for me, someone who's passionate about football and a football fan, there's nothing more frustrating than sitting down on a Sunday afternoon where there's a game you're really looking forward to, and you turn on television, and I don't know about you, Greg, but it looks like both teams have got the same kit on.
Yeah,
And yeah,
absolutely.
and especially if it's a game that you've been looking forward to, and even worse if it's a game that you've paid to go and see in the stadium. And like I said, hopefully that video just brings to life some of the experiences which for a lot of people you wouldn't give a second thought about, but for someone who's colorblind, then football can look like that, like both teams are wearing the same kit. So I just want to kind of bring that to life a little bit more, really, because ultimately for the players that you're working with, whatever age they are, that can be really disengaging. in terms of the game. It can be really disheartening, and in some cases might even drive them away from the game if they're having those common experiences of being frustrated, of not knowing who's on their team, of not knowing the area that you're playing in. And I'm just going to share a little video of a case study. So this is Marcus who's oh, sorry, bear with me. So Marcus is little boy Everton fan, as you'll see, and he's colourblind himself. So we're just going to bring to life just his experiences of what it's like to be colourblind in a grassroots football environment. Hopefully, bear with me. I promise Marcus is on his way. It's worth the wait. And I think, Marcus's final words there summarize it really well because, how many players might we have lost to football because of their experience? And it might be something as simple as the fact that, they play in a red kit and a lot of the teams they play against are in green, or, the bibs that might be used in training. And I look back and I think I was quite fortunate because the grassroots team that I played for, we actually wore bright yellow shirt. So we very rarely had kick clashes against other teams, and it was the same for my school team as well. We wore bright yellow, so I was quite fortunate really in the fact that because that was a really bright color, and the teams we were playing in reds and greens and blues. There was a big contrast, but other children aren't as fortunate, and I think that's that stat that's on the screen there in terms of 1 in 12 men, 1 in 200 women. If we're losing some players to the game because of the fact that they can't differentiate between the two teams, or they can't see the ball against the grass, then that's obviously a major problem. But obviously, the good news tonight is that we're going to go through some really simple strategies and solutions that you can use to make sure that children like Marcus have a really positive experience, even if they are colourblind, and go as far as they want in the game, and have that lifelong love of it, like we all do. Just before we delve into some of those tips, I just wanted to share some of my experiences. So apologies, my playing career was a while ago, so the photography wasn't quite as up to the standard it is now, so a bit blurry images. But the one on the left, so this was actually a game that I actually couldn't play in because of my colour blindness, because we didn't have different kits. We played in all red, the opposition were playing in all green, and I knew as soon as I saw the kits, as soon as I got to the ground, that I wasn't going to be able to play in it because the kits looked exactly the same. Sometimes, or a lot of the time, you try and get away with it if one team had white shorts, for example, or even different coloured socks, and you could differentiate just by that. But when it's a block colour like that, block red against block green, it was very difficult to see. So I knew that if I played in that game, I'd be letting my teammates down because I'd potentially be passing to the opposition more than I did anyway. And then the pitch on the right hand side. I was telling Greg before we started that I'm a Middlesbrough fan, and we played in a cup final at the Riverside Stadium, obviously a stadium that I'd always wanted to play at. And it wasn't until, we'd warmed up, but we had like tracksuit tops on, and the other team had tracksuit tops on. And it wasn't until we lined up in the tunnel and I looked, and, we were wearing all blue, and they were wearing all purple. And it literally looked like we were both wearing the same kit to the degree that, as you can see, both kits had the same white kind of stripes on them as well, and the same patterns in terms of that. I was a bit more selfish that day because I'd always wanted to play at the Riverside, and it was a cup final, and I was like, well, I'm not saying I can't play in this game, so I played, but essentially I spent the 90 minutes either passing to our goalkeeper because he was the only one I knew was on our team because he had a bright yellow top on, and or going on a mazy dribble and trying to take on the whole team, but my team and their team to get to the other opposite, which as a centre back didn't go down too well. But again, I think about, I was an adult in that situation, but if that's happening to a child, and again, they might not have the confidence, to speak up and say, well, actually, I can't tell the difference between these two kits, then that can affect their performance and ultimately could affect their confidence. And again, that might put them in a situation which thinks, well, actually, I don't want to go back and experience that again, which is obviously, the worst case scenario and what we want to avoid. Other things that, do cause issues, and I'm sure Greg will, feel these as well. Just things like, a lot of the work that we do in football might be inside in sports halls, and all the different lines and all the different coloured lines. Some of the lines are actually invisible against the flooring. Cones, the FA soon learned not to give me red cones because as soon as I put them out on the pitch, they never came back because I couldn't find them after I'd used them. There's actually, the Football Foundation have done a lot of really good work over the last year or so to make sure that there's no red lines on new AstroTurfs, because again they can be invisible, and even little things like selecting seats when you go into games as a fan, and selecting categories of tickets and things like that. Again, if it's color coded, then it can be really difficult to work out what it is that you're doing, where you sit in. So just these little things. And I was obviously mentioned being a Middlesbrough fan, and a couple of seasons ago, Middlesbrough actually had a green away kit, which obviously wasn't ideal because every time we played another team in red, we wore our green kit, which for me it looked exactly the same as our red kit, and again can cause a big challenge. And the image I've put on there, again, both teams look like they're wearing the same kit, and again, just big frustration as a fan, being in the stadium and really struggling, like you might have seen with the simulation I put on earlier to differentiate between the two teams. One for Steve as well, because this was from 3 or 4 seasons ago, Leeds v QPR game, and again, two very light kits. I think obviously Leeds in white. I think QPR in a light kind of pastel pale blue, I think, which just, again, look very similar in terms of just two light colours. I think, best way to probably describe it is seeing in shades as opposed to colours. So dark colours look the same, light colours can look the same. And so again, that can be a challenge. And I've just put some through there, through the colourblind simulation to give you a little bit of an idea. In terms of what it might look like for different types of colour blindness. So again, reds and greens, dark blues and dark reds, maroons can be very similar. Again, different types, the more severe types of colour blindness and the effect that can have. Now, obviously, that it's not a very common condition in football. Potentially two reasons. One, that colourblind players in the professional game maybe don't want to speak out and let people know that they are colourblind. Particularly their coaches, it might, go against them in terms of team selection and things like that. Or, potentially another school of thought is that, well, players might not actually get to the elite level of the game because, of the experiences that they've had, because of the challenges that they face on a week-to-week basis playing the game, where they sometimes can't differentiate between the colours, and the consistency of their performance might not be the same as others because, one week they might play really well because they're playing with two different coloured kits. Other weeks it might look like they're wearing the same kit, and that might really affect the performance. There are a couple of examples. So in the men's game, Thomas Delaney plays for Denmark, used to play for Dortmund. And he actually came out as colourblind after the game on the left hand side. So he was playing for Denmark in red top, white shorts, and they were playing against Mexico in a green top, white shorts, and uh, in a on a Danish version of Talksport, they were essentially a radio show. They were talking about his performance and it hadn't been very good. And so he actually rang up the radio station and said, "Well, yeah, there's a good reason why it wasn't very good because everybody on the pitch looked like they were in the same kit." So he kind of let everyone know that he was colourblind. And then Katie Moran, who used to play for Aston Villa, and she talks about how again, so in this case it was Aston Villa against Millwall, so Millwall in dark blue tops and Aston Villa in their maroon, and looked very similar. And she wasn't playing in that game because and she said she couldn't have played in the game because both teams looked like they were wearing the same kit. So they're just two very limited examples of professional players who've come out and said that they are colourblind and the challenges that they faced. Other things, I put a couple of images there around, sponsorship, the club badges, even the England kit in the top right hand corner. For me, the badge just blends into the background of the kit, so I can't see that the three lions badge. We think about how much money, particularly Premier League teams, how much sponsors pay in order to get to get their brand on the front of kits, and certainly the Aston Villa one, the Wolves example there, where they can't actually be seen for someone who might be colourblind. They just blend into the background of the kit. So again, a little bit of wasted sponsorship if you think about how many people that potentially can't see that. An example from that when it was in the media, and some of you might remember this. So this was 2 or 3 years ago now. When Manchester United played Liverpool, Manchester United wore their all green away kit, and because it was one of the most widely watched games in the world, that was obviously affected by a lot of people who were colourblind in terms of being able to see it, and so there was quite a lot of media coverage around that. And the fact that such a widely watched game and a percentage of the people watching couldn't actually differentiate between the two teams. The good news is that there are some instances of clubs who are actually taking this on board. So this is for example, this is Plymouth, who were due to wear a kit which clashed in a colourblind perspective in one of their FA Cup ties, but changed to their white kit to make sure there was a big contrast between the two kits. Other examples, Barnsley had a colourblind player who didn't want to be publicly known as a colourblind player, but they had a colourblind player, and so they changed shorts against Birmingham so that again it was easy for that player to differentiate. And something that might have gone unnoticed to the majority of people, but something for the likes of myself and Greg, which has been really evident over the last few UEFA tournaments, is that they've had a real policy of having two very contrasting kits. So they've actually stated that your one kit, your home kit, your away kit must be light, and the other one must be dark. And then that's why you might see a lot of teams. So, for example, in that picture, Spain changing their kit to a white one to play against Italy in blue, as opposed to wearing their red. And the reason behind that isn't for sponsorship reasons, it isn't for manufacturing reasons. It's actually because the white and the blue contrast much better than the red and the blue. So, UEFA have done some great work in terms of colourblindness and making sure that people can really engage with watching the tournaments as opposed to getting frustrated, like on the simulation that we saw earlier. So, like I said, hopefully that gives a little bit of an idea around what colourblindness is and why, ultimately in any environment, whether it's a professional game down to grassroots, into schools, wherever the game's being played, that why it is an issue and the effect it can have on players like Marcus that we saw in the video. But, ultimately what we want to look at tonight is, right, well, what are some of the simple strategies we can do to make a difference to those who are colourblind? And I think the really key thing to remember here is that we can implement these strategies. They're not going to have a negative effect on everybody else, but they can have a real positive impact on someone who's colourblind. And again, we can implement these strategies and the players might even not be completely aware that they are colourblind anyway. But by doing this, we can make it a really inclusive environment and make sure it's a really positive experience for them. So what I'm going to do at the end is share some of these resources. So one of them is the England football guidance. which we've written, which has again got a lot of all the strategies that we're going to go through tonight, and some of the real quick wins that we can implement. And so hopefully that's a handy little tool, and I'll send it over in the chat function at the end, so everybody's got access to that. Just to give you some of these little strategies then. So obviously, as we've seen, the kit clashes is probably the most significant one. And avoiding those common colorblind kit clashes, such as reds v greens, purple v red, like you saw in my example, two bright colors like yellow and orange. And just by avoiding those with bibs in games can have a massive impact. And something as simple as if you're playing a team on a Sunday morning, you're in red and they're in green, and you haven't got a change of kits, then just one team wearing bibs could make a massive difference to someone who's colorblind, whether they've told you or not that they're colorblind, because again, children might not have the confidence to speak up. On that right hand side, I've put, if you take nothing else away from tonight, then blue and yellow are the most colorblind friendly options. So whether that's your bibs in training, the kits that you're playing in, cones against grass, blue and yellow contrast the most. So they're the two colors that, if you can, and I'm not expecting everybody to go out on the call and straight after this get on and order new sets of bibs, but next time that your club or yourself as a coach are ordering new sets of equipment, rather than getting red and green, it'd be brilliant if you can get blue and yellow instead, because then if anyone is colorblind or anyone happens to be colorblind in the future, then that's really, really inclusive for them and would really help out. Other things to consider as well. Certainly when I started playing, the option was you had a white ball, and then if it snowed, you had an orange ball, and that was about it. But if you go in a sports shop now, you can get just about any color book football that you want. And again, some of those can be quite difficult. So red balls, the green, the darker ones, again against the contrast of traditionally green grass or a green AstroTurf, can be really hard to pick up, especially from a distance. An orange football or a red football from any distance further down the pitch, a colorblind player won't be able to pick that up. So again, a brighter ball such as a white one, a yellow one, which can be really provides that real contrast against the grass is the best option to go for. So again, next time your club's ordering some footballs, then choosing traditional white footballs or some bright yellow ones could make a massive difference to somebody who's colorblind who will be using them. And then other things such as cones, again. Like I've said, red cones on green grass just becoming visible for just about everybody who's got any degree of color blindness. So again, the blues, the whites, the yellows, using those can be really, really useful. And there are those options out there. It's just a case of choosing those ones as opposed to maybe traditional red and green cones. And then for those of you who might use tactics boards, traditionally the tactics boards come with dark blue and dark red markers with a black ball, and that can look like it does on that screen to someone who's colorblind. That again, because they're two dark colors or three dark colors, then they can be really difficult to differentiate. So a quick win can be using pens and using shapes, so like triangles against circles. Again, so we now use at DFA colorblind friendly markers, so we've got blue and yellow markers. You can even use fridge magnets for a couple of pounds, a pack of yellow ones and a pack of blue ones on your tactics board, as opposed to maybe the ones that traditionally come with it. And again, that can just make a massive difference and help the understanding and the engagement of players. And rather than switching off because they don't know which players are which, then that can really help in terms of their understanding of what it is that you're trying to get across using those tactics boards. And then probably the most common thing that might be heard, and we've probably all been guilty of saying some of these things, but for somebody who is colorblind, this can give them a little bit of fear and make them a bit anxious because they don't really understand what it is that you're trying to say. So just we're playing to the red line. I've had instances where I've run off the pitch because I haven't realised that the pitch is the red line and I haven't been able to see the red line against the green grass. So that's something. Like I said, the red against the green team, just something as simple as go and stand behind a green cone, or go and stand behind an orange cone, or go and stand behind a red cone. Well, to a player who doesn't know the difference between those three things, then again, that can be, a really disengaging activity. And again, but for a child, that can be something they might not have the confidence to say, well, actually, I don't know the difference between those colors. And so, you know, so we use now like cones, but they also have numbers on the cones. So you might say, all right, we're using the blue cone, which is number five, or whatever it might be, just to make it simple, and make sure everyone can, engage with it. And even things like you might have different teams, and the yellows are taggers, right? Well, for someone who's colorblind, they might not know the difference between the yellow team and the bright green bibs. So, it's probably just being aware of language and, where possible, having some other form of reference, such as on the tactics board, where it's, a triangle and a circle or numbers on your cone, just some little simple tactics like that, which can really make a massive difference to, to the players who might be colorblind. So, Greg, I'm just gonna bring you back in, if that's all right, just in terms of, you know, your experiences as you were younger, and if any of that kind of resonates with you, in terms of some of those things that we've talked about.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also adding to that from a referee perspective.
Mm.
So I've been refereeing for about 15, 16 years now. There has been the odd occasion where turned up and a team playing in red versus a team in green.
Yeah.
Safe to say I wasn't popular that day.
Some
In terms
controversial
of,
decisions.
yeah, giving offsides against the defending team. But yeah, it was. I think it's just being aware of that. I think the more awareness we can raise about this subject, particularly through club welfare officers sharing it with coaches, coaches making sure that players feel comfortable to share that information, or creating a space where you know obviously if you put the suggestions Ryan's given in place, you won't necessarily need to, because the game will be set up in such a way that it is okay for everybody. So I think that's the most important thing, is making the effort to make those small adjustments.
Absolutely. And I think, probably the key thing is that nobody even has to know that you've made these adjustments. If you change one week to the next from having red and green bibs to blue and yellow bibs, then the players probably aren't even going to be aware of that. But just that simple change could make a massive difference to one player in your team who might not even know they're colorblind or hasn't told you that they're colorblind, but they can suddenly see the difference between in contrast in training. And again, replacing your red cones with white cones, and so they can see the outline of the pitch or the box or the area that you're playing in. And again, that can make a massive difference. And um, you know, again, I can remember when I was younger, and coaches might look at me and think, like, well, why is his performance varying so much from one week to the next? And again, it might just, a lot of it was just down to the fact that, well, we're using bibs that can actually tell the difference between the two teams, or we're playing in an area and actually know which area is which now, and things like that. So, just remembering some of these simple strategies, and like I said, it's not going to affect anyone else, but it can really play, a big difference, to those people who are colorblind. And going back to what Marcus said, that hopefully keeping players in the game, because the next Lucy Bronze, the next Bukayo Saka, if they're colorblind and they fall out of love with the game, then we're losing those players, whoever they might be, because of something which we don't need to do. So just to start to kind of bring things together, going back to what we were trying to get from this kind of 40, 45 minutes tonight, is hopefully give that understanding of what colour blindness is. Most importantly, understanding that, well, actually, it's probably a little bit more common than a lot of people think. And there might be, like I said, 1 in 12, chances are that if you've got a male squad, there's going to be someone who's got some degree of colour blindness. So understanding, what colour blindness is, and then why it's such an important issue in football, and hopefully some of those the little videos, hopefully some of the things that we've shared, hopefully some of my experiences, Greg's experiences around that have kind of brought to life why it can be so important, and why it can potentially be disengaging for some of those players, some of those children. But hopefully, if nothing else, we've seen that yes, it can be a major issue, but actually there's some really simple strategies that we can employ in a football environment, just by using blues and yellows as opposed to reds and greens, for example, that can make such a positive difference to the players that you're working with, and just give them a really positive experience of the game that we all love. And hopefully, like I said, that they fall in love with it, and just want to carry on playing and being involved in the game for many years to come. So, based on those things, just like as you're going away tonight, and like I said, really appreciate you kind of giving up your time to be here tonight. But I'd really like you, personally, just to think, right, well, what's my action plan in terms of, going away from tonight? What impact can you have on your players as a result of giving up, your 45 minutes tonight? And so I'm going to kind of leave you with that question in terms of, what can you do to have a positive impact on colourblind players? And again, I've put in brackets, whether they know or whether you know they're colourblind or not. And it might be something as simple as, right, well, my action plan is next time we order some cones, I'm going to get blue and yellow cones as opposed to red and green. And that could have such a positive impact, even though it's such a tiny thing, could have such a positive impact. And so hopefully, like I said, you found some of the things that we've gone through really useful, but hopefully as well, it can have a really positive impact on you. It can have a positive impact on your players and give them those really positive experiences. Just to point you in direction, and I'm going to share this in the chat box so you'll have all these resources. But just to point in direction, so recently done one of the CoachCast series as a podcast. So again, if you've got other coaches at your clubs who might find this useful, then there's a podcast that I've just done around this topic. Um, Colourblind Awareness. So they are like the Bible of anything to do with colourblindness. It is an amazing resource. I would advise everybody who's on the call tonight just to go to that website to check it out. So colourblindawareness.org, and they've got so many resources. Football, wider sport, but also in education. So again, if you do know some people who might be colourblind or children with colour blindness, then there'll be resources there which can be really useful. So I'd really recommend going onto that website just to have a look at all the things that they've got on there. We've got RFA guidance as well. So I'll put a link into the chat as well. So that'll again, puts everything into a football context, and there's articles on there that we've done as well, which will hopefully be useful. Just from my perspective as well. So recent things I've done. So we've got the EFA guidance. I've done an article with kind of the 5 top tips and a kind of bite-sized version of a 2-minute video of what we've gone tonight. So again, I'll put the links to those in, and hopefully there'll be good little reminders for yourself, but also maybe people who weren't able to join us tonight or you think would find the key messages useful. Then there'll be some little bite-sized versions that they can tap into and hopefully have that really positive effect on them as well. So just finally from me, so like I said, just a big thank you for giving up your time to be here tonight. A big thank you to Steve and to Greg for inviting me to and giving me the platform to talk, and just a big thank you for putting on this series and making that massive difference, not only in the county of Cheshire but across the game as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan. We've had some really good feedback in the chat as well. I'll just run through a couple of these. So Sharon's outlined that these strategies are easy fixes without necessarily drawing attention to colour blindness. So that'll be a really helpful tool for coaches to use. Louise has said around, it's just about changing the equipment and kits to make sure they don't clash, which is great. Louise has also added around making sure that the child feels comfortable letting them know, which is absolutely the case. You can even potentially put that on a registration form or ask for parents and carers to potentially pass that information into you as a club. We've had a question from Chris. Says maybe a really daft question. There's no such thing. But is there any data as to roughly what age a person is diagnosed with colour blindness?
Okay.
Someone who regularly coaches age 5 to 8. Just wondering if I'm coaching some children who may not have been diagnosed.
Okay, yes, that's a brilliant question, Chris, and probably links into what Louisa said as well. So, like I said earlier, that I and I think Greg as well, we had colour blindness tests when we were at school. So it used to be as soon as you got to school, that was one of the things that you had, a colour blindness test, and it was similar to the image I put up earlier, which was essentially numbers in circles. And you could see one number if you were colourblind and a different number if you weren't colourblind, and that was the test that they did. Unfortunately, Chris, that funding was taken away, and so those tests don't happen anymore. So the problem we've got now is, some of those 5 to 8 year olds that you might be coaching, the chances are there will be some who aren't diagnosed, but there's also a big chance that they won't ever get diagnosed, because the only way to get diagnosed now is actually to go to an optician's. So if a parent took them to an optician's, then they can have the colourblindness test. But obviously not every parent's going to do that, and particularly if they're not aware that there's colour blindness in the family. So for myself, my granddad was severely colourblind. So he passed it on to my mum. She's not colourblind, but she very kindly passed it down to me. I'm the eldest of three. I'm the most severely colourblind, and my younger brother is red-green colourblind, and my youngest brother isn't actually colourblind at all. But again, we got tested, very early age, because my granddad was so severely colourblind. But there will be a lot of children who aren't diagnosed. So, you might ask the question, are you colourblind? You might ask the parents that, and they might tell you no, but they might be just because they've never thought about it, and they're not aware that they're not tested. So I think probably, Chris, the biggest thing to kind of get across is that just by making some of those changes that we've talked about, then it doesn't matter if they're colourblind or not. Just by having the contrast of the football and the grass, and the two bibs being completely different colours, then that can make a big difference. So even if they're not aware they're colourblind, or even if you're not aware they're colourblind, then that'll help whatever the situation, and again won't negatively impact any of the other players as well. So hope that answers the question. But yeah, unfortunately, players won't be diagnosed now unless they actually, the parents make the decision to actually take them to an optician to get diagnosed.
That's great. Thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate it. Just sort of a caveat to that. If you've got a feeling that a child could be colourblind, would you recommend discreetly just saying, could you go and pick that red cone up or something like that? Because now I've been coaching for 30 years, and some of this really rings true with some of the younger kids that have coached, and like they've never been able to stay on the pitch. And somebody like me, I favour red. Red's my favourite colour, so I use loads of red cones to make squares. And I'm really, really questioning now whether, I have been coaching kids that are colourblind, and you're thinking, what's up with them? Why are they not staying within the square? And if you said no, I wouldn't really recommend.
No, I think probably, if it is something that you are concerned about, I think probably it's that conversation with the parents, as opposed to, because like if I put myself in that situation as a child, like when I was younger, that was my worst nightmare. If a coach said, "Oh, can you go pick up the red cones for me?" and I'd just look and I'd be like, oh, it was just guesswork. You know what I mean? So probably not putting them in that situation. And again, just linked to what you said there, and it's just brought back a memory from a coach I was working with not so long ago, and he was doing like an activity where it was like a reaction practice. So he had like green cones laid out, red cones laid out, orange cones laid out, and it was like when he said a color, the players had to run to that color as quick as they could. And he said to me, "Oh, this player's normally really fast at reacting, but for tonight they're really, really slow." And I was like, "Oh, I can tell you why it might be." And it did turn out that player was colourblind, and they were having to wait for everybody else to run to the cones so they knew which one to go to. And so again, and to use your example of like using red cones as your favorite color, and again, I played in a game not so long ago, and the pitch was marked out by red cones, and I ran off the pitch, and that's as an adult, and it's embarrassing. So it's like, it's just having those little things in your mind in terms of and like I said, they can just make a massive positive difference.
Yeah, the reason why when I said it, to say to a child, go and could you pick that red cone up? I didn't mean in front of everybody. That would be discreetly.
No.
The only reason I'd say that is because some of the parents, as you probably well know, we have to deal with, sometimes can be quite unapproachable if you're questioning something about the child and just raising something. So it's just, but that's fine. I'll take that on board. First and foremost, you've got to think of the child.
Yeah, and I think that, like I said, probably the best advice is just, if you use cones that aren't colourblind, it's not, it won't be an issue.
Yeah,
but,
cool. Yeah, thank you, brilliant. Cheers.
No, you're welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts? Sharon, I can confirm we'll send out the guidance that contains the picture slides with the what the colourblind vision looks like. We'll send that out after.
yeah, what I'll do is I'll put all the links in the chat. I'm not sure if people will be able to access the chat once you leave, but if not, I'll send it all through to Greg, and then yeah, Greg will send it out. So all the resources I've mentioned tonight, you'll get access to, and I'll send through the slide deck as well, so you've got all the images and things. Which, yeah, it tends to be that one with the shirts is the one that seems to have the most impact when I show people, and people don't actually believe that you see. So if I put that one up again, yeah, when I tell people that, like, kind of those three, the two on the left hand side and the top right corner are all the same, people don't believe me, but it seems to have an impact in terms of helping people to understand.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ryan. I'm just going to bring in Steve, our CEO, just before we conclude. Steve.
Yeah, Greg, thank you. You know, my usual thanks and to Ryan, who's fantastic, great guy, great friend, great ally to the county, and also to people on the call tonight. Thank you so much for giving up your Monday evening. You know, it just means that you're really progressive and you really want to help. So really appreciate it. And I think that for me, it's always about Greg and I are always talking about how can we just make ourselves a little bit better each day to try and make the game a better place. So thank you, Ryan, for helping us do that today.
Oh, you're welcome.
And
thank you for inviting me.
Those that you don't know, Ryan's got a new job, which he starts on Monday. So really good luck and best wishes for that, Ryan.
Thanks, Steve.
And we're all wishing you the very best in that new job. Know you'll be a huge success, and keep up the great work. And thanks again to everybody being on the call. Really enjoyable. So, Greg, back over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so just to follow on from what Steve says, massive thanks for giving up your Monday evening to join us today. As we've mentioned, you know, making football for all is the message behind this webinar series, and hopefully you'll be up for joining us on the remainder of the sessions this season. We've got one per month on a variety of topics. So head over to the website and check out our inclusion hub, and you can find lots of resources in relation to all aspects of equality, diversity and inclusion. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you again soon. So massive thanks to Ryan again for joining us, and I'll share all the resources, the link to the video and any other guidance via email tomorrow. So thanks very much, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers, Chris. Speak soon.
Cheers, Stevie. Take care, mate.
Yeah.